The broken ship and the reluctant savior, Captain Marcus Vale, watched the crimson warning lights paint his bridge in the color of blood. A used Defiant groaned around him, hull plates buckling under the stress of emergency deceleration. 3. Weeks into what should have been a routine supply run to the outer colonies, everything had gone spectacularly wrong. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Lieutenant Torres, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Life support is failing in sections 12 through 15. Marcus gripped his command chair as another shudder ran through the ship. 23 years of service, from the Mars Rebellion to the Titan mining wars, and he'd never lost a vessel. He wasn't about to start now. "Emergency landing protocols," he ordered. "Find us the nearest habitable world. Sir, there's a planet 2 million kilometers off our starboard bow. It's showing as occupied, but not by any known human colonies." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. First contact situations were supposed to involve diplomats and scientists, not a crippled warship bleeding atmosphere into space. Do we have a choice? Not unless you want to explain to command why we became space debris. The planet below looked like a jewel against the black void. Swirling purple clouds obscured most of the surface, but he could make out vast silver cities that spiraled up from crystalline mountains. Whatever lived down there had mastered architecture that made human engineering look like children playing. With Blockstadt, the Defiant screamed through the alien atmosphere, its heat shields glowing white-hot. Marcus held his breath as they cleared the cloud layer, revealing a landscape that defied explanation. Floating gardens drifted between towering spires, connected by bridges that seemed made of solidified light. Everything pulsed with a soft, bioluminescent glow. "Incoming transmission," Torres announced. It's in perfect English, sir." A voice filled the bridge, melodious and strangely sad. "Human vessel, you are dying. I can help, but know that my aid comes with consequences. This is Captain Marcus Vale of the United Earthship Defiant. We need immediate assistance." Silence stretched for long seconds. Then, "I am Keeper Zara of the Luminari. Your ship will not survive another minute in our atmosphere. I'm extending our city's protective field around you, but once you land, you cannot leave." "Why not?" Another pause. "Because I am the last of my kind, and my people's law forbids contact with your species. To save you, I must become an exile." Marcus stared at the view screen as massive energy barriers shimmered to life around his ship. Below, he could see a single figure standing on what looked like a landing platform carved from pure crystal. Even at this distance, he could tell she was tall, graceful, and utterly alone. "Keeper Zara," he said softly, "why are you helping us?" "Because," came the reply, heavy with centuries of solitude, "I am tired of watching things die." The Defiant touched down with surprising gentleness, cradled by technology that humanity could barely comprehend. Through the bridge windows, Marcus watched their savior approach. She moved like liquid starlight, her skin gleaming with an inner radiance that shifted from silver to gold to deep blue. When she looked up at the ship, her eyes held an ocean of loneliness that made his chest ache. She was beautiful beyond human. Imagination and utterly, completely alone. The weight of exile Zara stood at the base of the human ship, feeling the vibrations of its dying systems through the crystal platform beneath her feet. The vessel was crude by Luminari standards, all sharp angles and brutal functionality, but she found something oddly appealing about its honest design. No deception, no hidden purposes. It was exactly what it appeared to be. The airlock hissed open, and the first human stepped onto her world. Captain Marcus Vale was smaller than she'd expected, barely reaching her shoulder, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. His brown hair was streaked with premature gray, and his dark eyes held the weight of responsibility she recognized in her own reflection. "Keeper Zara," he said, inclining his head in what she assumed was a gesture of respect. "I can't begin to thank you for saving my crew." "Do not thank me yet," she replied, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. "You do not understand what I have done." More humans emerged from their ship, 23 in total. They moved with the careful precision of a military unit, but she could see wonder in their faces as they took in the impossible architecture surrounding them. One of them, a young woman with curious eyes, pointed at the floating gardens and whispered something that made her companion smile. "Tell me," Marcus said, drawing her attention back to him, "what consequences were you speaking of?" Zara gestured toward the city rising around them, its spires reaching toward the purple sky. "The Luminari are dying, Captain. We are an ancient people, perhaps too ancient. Our reproduction requires perfect genetic harmony, and such matches have become increasingly rare. I am the last fertile female of my species." She watched his expression shift from confusion to understanding to something that might have been horror. "For 300 years, I have been studied, tested, and sequestered. Every day, the Council of Keepers searches for a compatible mate among the few males who remain. Every day, they fail." She turned away from him, unable to bear the pity she saw growing in his eyes. "Your arrival has given me an excuse to violate our sacred isolation. They will exile me for this, strip me of my title and my home. But surely they can't punish you for saving lives?" Zara's laugh held no humor. "You misunderstand. Saving your lives is not my crime. Choosing to do so, rather than allowing the Council to make that decision, is what condemns me. I acted independently, without consultation or approval. In Luminari society, that is unforgivable." The truth was more complex than she could explain. The real reason for her exile would be discovered soon enough when the bioscanners detected what even she didn't fully understand yet. The strange resonance that had awakened in her the moment the human ship had entered their system. The way her bioluminescent patterns shifted whenever she looked at their captain. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked. "Until they come for me?" "Perhaps a few hours." The Council moves slowly, but they move with absolute certainty. She faced him again, surprised by the determination in his stance. "What are you thinking, human?" "I'm thinking," Marcus said quietly, "that if you're going to be exiled anyway, maybe it doesn't have to be alone." The words hung in the air between them, like a bridge neither dared to cross. Around them, the city hummed with ancient power, and somewhere in its crystalline heart, sensors were already reporting the impossible. Genetic compatibility readings. Unlike anything in recorded Luminari history, Zara felt her patterns shift to colors that hadn't graced her skin in centuries. And for the first time in her long life, she wondered if exile might be another word for freedom. When worlds collide, the Council of Keepers materialized on the crystal platform like vengeful gods stepping from the ether. 12 figures robed in shifting light, their faces hidden behind masks that reflected the viewer's deepest fears. At their head stood High Keeper Voss, his presence so commanding that even the air seemed to bow before him. Zara of the 7th lineage. His voice resonated with the authority of millennia. "You have violated the Prime Directive. Explain yourself." Marcus stepped forward, placing himself between Zara and the Council. "She saved our lives. If that's a crime in your society, then your laws need examining." "Silence, lesser being." Voss raised a hand that crackled with energy. "You exist here only by her misguided mercy. Do not mistake tolerance for acceptance." "High Keeper," Zara said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands, "I invoke the right of final declaration." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the city's perpetual hum seemed to pause. Marcus watched as the council members turned to one another, their masked faces unreadable, but their body language speaking of shock and uncertainty. You would claim that right? Voss asked, his tone carrying disbelief. For these ... humans? I claim it for myself, Zara replied. For the right to choose my own path before I am stripped of all choice. Marcus felt the weight of something momentous happening around him, though he didn't understand the specifics. What's the right of final declaration? A dying law, Voss said dismissively. A relic from when our people were young and foolish. It allows a condemned keeper to make one last act of will before judgment is passed. And what will you choose, Zara? Another council member asked, her voice like silk over steel. What final declaration will you make that could possibly justify this betrayal? Zara looked at Marcus, and in her luminous eyes he saw centuries of loneliness, giving way to something he recognized from his own mirror during the darkest moments of command. The look of someone who had finally found something worth fighting for. I declare bond compatibility with Captain Marcus Vale of the human species, she said clearly. I invoke the ancient right of cross-species union and claim him as my chosen mate. The reaction was instantaneous. 3 council members simply vanished, unable to process what they heard. The others began speaking in rapid harmonics that made Marcus's teeth ache. But Voss remained perfectly still, his masked face turned toward them both. Impossible, he said finally. No alien species has ever shown compatibility with luminary genetics. It is biologically inconceivable. Then test it, Zara challenged. Submit us both to the bonding chamber. If I am wrong, I will accept exile without further protest. If I am right. If you are right, Voss said slowly, then everything we have believed about our species' isolation is false. Marcus felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. What exactly are you proposing? He asked Zara. The bonding chamber will determine if our genetic patterns can harmonize, she explained. If they can, it means we are biologically compatible for reproduction. It also means the luminary laws preventing cross-species contact are based on false premises. And if they can't, then you die, Voss interjected with obvious satisfaction. The bonding chamber kills incompatible subjects rather than risk genetic contamination. Marcus looked at his crew, scattered across the platform behind him. 23 lives depending on his decisions. A ship that would never fly again without alien technology. And a woman who had risked everything to save him, now asking him to risk everything to save her. How long do I have to decide? The chamber awaits, Voss said. The decision must be made now. Marcus met Zara's eyes again, seeing hope and terror, warring in their depths. In that moment, he understood that this wasn't just about biological compatibility or alien politics. This was about 2 people who had spent their lives in service to others, finally finding someone who understood the weight of command and the burden of isolation. I accept, he said simply. The council's reaction was swift and merciless. Energy. Barriers sprang up around Marcus and Zara, separating them from the human crew. The platform beneath their feet began to descend into the city's depths, carrying them toward a fate that would either prove love could transcend species or destroy them both. As they sank into the crystal heart of the luminary civilization. Marcus heard Voss's final words echoing from above. If you survive this, human, you will have changed the course of galactic history. I wonder if your species is prepared for such responsibility. The Chamber of Truth, the bonding chamber, existed at the heart of the luminary city, carved from a single massive crystal that pulsed with its own inner light. As Marcus and Zara were lowered into its depths, he could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on them. The walls were covered in intricate carvings that seemed to move in his peripheral vision, telling stories of bonds formed and love found across the long history of the luminary people. I need you to understand, Zara said as they approached the chamber's entrance. This process will strip away all pretense between us. The chamber reads not just genetic compatibility, but emotional and spiritual harmony. There will be no secrets between us when this is done. Marcus studied her face, noting the way her bioluminescent patterns had shifted to deep purple shot through with gold. Are you afraid of what I might see? I am afraid of what you might not see, she replied. I am old, Marcus, older than your entire civilization. I have made choices and done things that would horrify you. The loneliness of my existence has sometimes driven me to acts of desperation. We all have darkness in our past, Marcus said gently. The question is what we choose to do with it. The chamber doors opened before them, revealing a space that defied physics. The walls curved impossibly, covered in bioluminescent nodes that pulsed like a heartbeat. In the center stood two alcoves, human-sized and obviously recently modified. The chamber has already begun adapting to your physiology, Zara observed with surprise. That should not be possible unless we're already compatible on some level? She nodded, her patterns brightening with what he was learning to recognize as hope. The preliminary scans must have detected something. But Marcus, the final test requires complete vulnerability. Physical, emotional, and mental. If we are not truly harmonious, the chamber will kill us. Yes, you mentioned that. Marcus managed a wry smile. In my experience, the best relationships require a little mortal peril to get started properly. Despite everything, she laughed. The sound was like crystal chimes in a gentle wind, and it made something warm unfurl in his chest. They entered the alcoves together, and immediately Marcus felt the chamber's influence washing over him. It was like being submerged in warm honey mixed with starlight. Every nerve ending came alive as sensors made of pure energy began mapping his body, his mind, his very essence. He could sense Zara beside him, feel her presence like a second heartbeat. In his chest. Slowly, carefully, the chamber began sharing their experiences with each other. He saw her childhood in a city of light, surrounded by beings who loved her, but could never truly understand her burgeoning abilities. He felt her growing isolation as she matured and her genetic uniqueness became apparent. The decades of testing, of being treated like a precious resource rather than a person. The slow death of hope as one potential mate after another proved incompatible. In return, she experienced his memories of Earth, the blue-green world that had forged humanity in fire and flood. She felt his first command, the weight of responsibility for lives under his care. The night spent staring at stars and wondering what waited among them. The loneliness of command that had kept him from forming lasting bonds with anyone. Chamber delved deeper, past conscious memory into the genetic patterns that defined them both. Marcus felt his DNA unraveling and reforming, analyzed by technologies that could read the poetry written in chromosomes. He sensed Zara's genetic code intertwining with his own, two completely different evolutionary paths somehow finding common ground. It's impossible, he heard Voss's voice echoing from above, transmitted through the chamber's communication systems. No two species could be this compatible without common ancestry. But the evidence was undeniable. Their genetic patterns weren't just compatible. They were complementary. Where human genetics showed weakness, luminary strength compensated. Where luminary code had grown stagnant through isolation, human adaptability provided new possibilities. More than that, their emotional resonance was perfect. Two leaders, two protectors, two souls who had spent their lives caring for others while bearing their burdens alone. The chamber recognized what they themselves were only beginning to understand. They completed each other. The process reached its crescendo, energy coursing through both of them as the chamber made its final determination. Marcus felt his consciousness merge briefly with Zara's, experienced the universe through her ancient eyes, felt the depth of her loneliness, and the blazing hope that his presence had ignited. Then, with a sound like singing crystals, the chamber released them. They stumbled from the alcoves into each other's arms, both trembling with the after-effects of the most intimate experience possible between two beings. Around them, the chamber's walls pulsed with colors neither species had seen before, a new spectrum born from their union. "Well," Marcus said, his voice hoarse with emotion, "I guess that settles the compatibility question." Above them, silence reigned where the council had been. For the first time in Luminari history, the ancient laws would have to change. The new dawned 3 months after the bonding ceremony that had shaken the foundations of Luminari society. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Defiant, watching twin suns set over the crystal city that had become his second home. The ship gleamed with hybrid technology, human engineering enhanced by Luminari innovations that made it capable of journeys no Earth vessel had ever attempted. "The Council has reached their decision," Zara said, joining him at the viewport. Her patterns now showed permanent streaks of the golden hue that indicated a successful bonding, mixed with colors that had never been seen in Luminari history until their union. "And they're terrified," she said with a smile that held both amusement and sadness. "Our bonding has produced genetic possibilities they never imagined. The preliminary medical scans suggest our offspring will carry traits from both species, potentially solving both our reproduction crisis and humanity's limitations in deep space." Marcus slipped an arm around her waist, still marveling at how perfectly she fit against him, despite their size difference. "That's good news, isn't it? For us, yes. For the established order of galactic civilization." She paused, her expression growing serious. "Marcus, what we've proven changes everything. If humans and Luminari can bond successfully, it suggests your species might be compatible with others as well. The isolation barriers that have kept galactic civilizations separate for millennia might all be artificial." Through the viewport, they could see other ships beginning to arrive. Word of the successful cross-species bonding had spread through the galactic communication networks like wildfire. Delegations from a dozen civilizations were requesting permission to study the phenomenon, to test their own compatibility with humanity. "Lieutenant Torres thinks we've accidentally started a revolution," Marcus said. "Torres is probably right." Zara's patterns shifted to the deep blue that indicated concern. "Are your people ready for this? To become the center of a galactic paradigm?" Shift? Marcus considered the question seriously. In the months since their bonding, reports had been flooding in from Earth, the revelation that humans could form reproductive bonds with alien species had triggered everything from religious revivals to political upheavals. Some groups saw it as humanity's destiny to unite the galaxy through biological compatibility. Others viewed it as a threat to human genetic purity. "I don't know if we're ready," he admitted, "but I know we're not the type to back down from a challenge. And if other species are facing the same isolation and reproductive crisis as the Luminari, then humanity might be the key to preventing multiple extinctions," Zara finished. "The question is whether your species can handle the responsibility that comes with that kind of power." A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Torres's voice filled the observation deck. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command. They're requesting your immediate return for consultation on something they're calling the Galactic Compatibility Protocols." "Tell them we'll leave within the hour," Marcus replied. He turned back to Zara, seeing his own mix of excitement and apprehension reflected in her luminous eyes. "Ready to meet Earth? Are they ready to meet me?" She countered. "I'm still the alien who violated her people's most sacred laws. Some humans might see me as either a threat or a prize to be won." "Then they'll learn what I learned," Marcus said firmly. "That you're neither threat nor prize, but a person who chose love over law and hope over despair. If they can't respect that, they're not worth impressing." The rebuilt Defiant lifted from the crystal platform with silent grace, its hybrid engines, creating barely a whisper as it rose toward the stars. In the medical bay, genetic samples from both species waited to be analyzed by Earth's best scientists. In the cargo hold, cultural artifacts and technological specifications promised to revolutionize human understanding of the galaxy. But the most important cargo was less tangible, proof that love could transcend species, that isolation was a choice rather than a necessity, and that sometimes the most important decisions were made not by councils or committees, but by individuals willing to risk everything for the possibility of something better. As they jumped to hyperspace, leaving the luminary homeworld behind, Marcus and Zara stood together, watching the stars shift and blur around them. Somewhere ahead lay Earth, and beyond that, a galaxy full of species who had spent millennia believing they were alone. They were about to discover they were wrong. The age of isolation was ending, and the age of unity was about to begin. All because one human captain had been willing to trust his heart, and one alien keeper had chosen love over duty.